That's all you have?
That's all I got.
All right, buddy, I'm Jimmy. I'm an alcoholic. Grateful to be alive and sober. And, oh, hold on. All right, I just wanted to set that for 3 hours. You ready? All right, so, again, Jimmy, alcoholic, grateful to be alive and sober, and it's customary where I come from to let you know that I have a home group. It's called the Design for Living Group on the Jersey Shore. I have a sponsor. I have a service sponsor. Apparently, I need a lot of adult supervision. I sponsor a lot of guys, but most importantly, I've been sober since my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that was on March 28, 1987. And I'd like to thank the committee for the opportunity to speak in a tanning booth because I thought Amy was crying. She's sweating up here last night. But what a great weekend! You guys know what you're doing out here. And me and my wife, my beautiful wife, Mary Beth, we've had a great time. And so I'd like to thank the committee. I'd like to thank Jason for the invite. It just has been tremendous. And I just want to remember this before I forget it. We came out here a little bit early, and we were with some friends of ours, my wife's friend from back in grammar school, and they're non-alcoholics, and they don't drink. Well, they do drink, but they're normal people. Let's put it that way, you know. And Donna said, today's her 65th birthday. She goes, I'd like to do something different for my birthday. No, well, Dick, you can't get any more different than this, that's for sure. So if you all will please just join me in wishing Donna happy birthday for your 65th birthday. There you go. And I know, and you probably know why that's so important. Oh, birthday. I didn't bring her a gift, but thank God I won that fireplace or whatever it is. I don't think it's TSA approved to bring home. But what a great week. I loved all the speakers. I know all the speakers. They all left. Good support, right? I never prayed for rain delays, but I hope at the airport, or plane delays, whatever you call that. But great. The only ones who stayed were the Al-Anons, Kathy and Heather. Thank you so much. Something to do with we have to clean up after the alcoholics leave today, you know. And I thank Mike. You know, I love listening to the history of conferences. I love going to group anniversary meetings when, you know, they go up and they talk about how the group started and how, you know, they're thriving and all the people that were so important, you know, in the beginning. And, you know, I think, and he named some great names. You know, I didn't know them. Harlan, Lenny Z, and his precious wife, Marcia. You know, and you know, I used to hear a thing, you know, about two people who die sober. The first guy that dies sober without Alcoholics Anonymous, his spirit dies with him. But when a person dies in Alcoholics Anonymous sober, their spirit lives forever. And we hear that from meeting to meeting to meeting about the elders, the people who walked this walk before us. And he talked about those people last night, and that's so powerful. It reminds me of another Sunday talk, one that's more important than this one, 73 years ago in Cleveland, Ohio, when Dr. Bob stood at the podium at the First International Convention, and he talked about us. And he took that farewell speech, and he said something in that farewell speech that said, none of us would be here today if someone had taken the time to explain to us what this is all about. And as he spoke about those people, and I think about the men and women in my life, and I'm sure in your life, the people that shared their story with you that got us here today, and now friend Justin, our new friend Justin that's here today, congratulations to him. So I'll just tell you a little bit about my story. You know, I like to tell, by the way, I met a lot of people from New Jersey here. There they go. I was shocked that the witness protection program came this far west. And just to give you a little visual where I come from, I live 60 miles south of New York City on the beach, on the ocean of New Jersey, the Jersey Shore. You know, the locals in the Chamber of Commerce like to call it the Irish Riviera. Yeah, members of Alcoholics Anonymous like to call it Cirrhosis by the Sea. You know, it's a beautiful place. We love it. You know, me and my wife, we great AA, just like here. Great AA. You could feel the energy here. You know. So, tell you a little bit about me. You know, I was born perfect, and I was quickly handed over to these two character defects called Mom and Dad, and that might sound like a joke to you, but let me tell you, that wasn't a joke to me, you know, because, of course, I live under that delusion, like a lot of us do, that delusion of alcoholism, the delusion that nothing is my fault. And again, my parents were the easy ones to pick first, right? They were the ones who raised me, you know? They were the ones that did not understand or didn't know that the life I was going to start to show them, they were baffled by my behavior. You know, I introduced them to a way of life they never even knew existed. But little did they know that exactly 7 miles west of my front door growing up, 7 miles west exactly, in a city called Newark, New Jersey, at an office building on 17 William Street. On the 6th floor of that office building, there was an office called Honors Dealers. And 20 years earlier, before I was born, there was two gentlemen in that office, and they were writing a book. One guy's name was Bill W. And the other one was Hank P. And little did my parents know that that book would be the book that would give this kid everything they always wanted for this kid, a way of life, a design for living. Thank God for Alcoholics Anonymous. So I'm growing up in this city. I'm growing up in a cement jungle. When I saw the trees here, I'd never seen trees. I mean, you know, I'm a cement guy, you know, and I grew up in a very tough neighborhood. I'm 65 years old, like Donna now. Well, guess what? We got it made. We can go to dinner at 4:30 now, you know. We could pick off the senior menu. Everything in life now is 10% off. It's unbelievable. The perks of getting old. But I grew up in this neighborhood. I grew up in a neighborhood that is, it's a tough neighborhood. It's a real rough and tough neighborhood. Everyone, you know, everyone's a cop, everyone's a fireman. There's not much education. You know, we're street guys. I'm a street guy, you know. You know, if you caught me on the street, if you were driving down the street, you know, I'm not too bright. If you were driving down the street and you saw a guy like me and Jason, right, and you yelled out, "Hey, there's a dead bird," we both look up. See if that works. I'll let that sink in a little bit. Oh, but I grew up in this neighborhood, and I grew up, and the only requirement for membership in the neighborhood is 5 or more kids. And, you know, it's the 60s, you know, all the moms stayed home, all the dads worked, you know. And with all these kids and with all these things going on in my neighborhood, you know, there was always an event going on. There was always a birthday party. There was always a christening. There was always some kind of graduation. There was something going on all the time. And at every event that I was ever at, King Alcohol was present. And as a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, 8-year-old, we hear this term all the time, like this disease of perception, the way I would look at alcohol, the way I would watch you drink, the way I watch my old man drink, and the way I watch, you know, the older guys and the women in the neighborhood. It looked like the alcohol equates to fun. Alcohol equates to freedom. Alcohol equates to no problems in life. And there was an ease and comfort that I witnessed when I would see people drink. And in my house every night I had this guy, cunning, baffling, powerful in his own way. We call him Dad. My dad's a tough guy. My dad's a real tough guy. My dad's a guy that I'm afraid of. My dad's in that generation. He would have been 96 years old today. My dad's that type of guy that, you know, he never showed emotion, never sat us down and had a little fireside chat about life, never gave us hugs, never said, "I love you." Don't feel sorry for me when I tell you that. But what I would witness every day is my dad would come home huffing and puffing, angry about something. But my mom would make these two pictures, one called martinis and the other one called Manhattans. And what I would witness as an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old, my dad would take that first drink. And like everyone in here, something happened to my dad when he took that first drink. And all of a sudden, he became a different person. He became the guy that wanted to have a catch in the backyard. He became that guy that had some jokes in him. He became that guy that just seemed to be okay. But don't let me fool you. There were those days. And his days looked for something like this. My dad would take that first drink, and he would explode in rage. He would explode in anger. And all of a sudden, the plates would be flying across the kitchen. A kitchen chair would be flying across the kitchen. If you grabbed one of us young guys, or one of his kids, we'd be flying across the kitchen because my dad just could not contain his anger for whatever reason. That doesn't make me an alcoholic. Makes me a kid that grows up with a lot of fear. Makes me a kid that has a lot of insecurity about myself. Makes me a kid that walks around with something that is probably the most dangerous thing for alcoholics of our type. I walk around with a lot of secrets. Because I come from a neighborhood, I come from a family, I come from a place where you don't talk about the way you feel inside. You learn to internalize all your emotions. You learn to push that stuff down. And I remember night after night, my dad would explode, and we had 3 boys in one room, bunk beds, my brothers, and the sheets would be over our head. We'd be terrified of my dad coming in and grabbing one of us. And we would internalize that fear, I come to Alcoholics Anonymous eventually, and I hear you old-timers say things like this, that alcoholism is nothing more than a soul sickness caused by a separation from God and a disconnect from each other. I got walls built around me growing up. I'm not talking about what's going on. I don't even know how to talk about what's going on. I think it's normal the way I'm growing up. But this is the stuff that's going on in my house. We have a corner bar where I live. On every corner there's a bar. And I'd go up with my friends, pretend to be someone I'm not talk about what's going on. We go be playing ball, and I'd look in that bar in the corner. Who do I see? I see you guys in there. And you'd be playing pool, you're watching a football game, you're having a good time. I'd see you women in there. And what your women in there is getting loaded, picking up these guys, obviously. And again, perceptions. This idea, I can't wait to do this, can't wait to do this. And that day came 52 years ago. Can't believe it's 52 years, I'm getting old. 52 years, I'm in a cemetery with 5 guys that I still know to this day. And here comes that first bottle, it's called Colt 45 malt liquor. And I put my arm in there with a great amount of fear, and I start drinking on that Colt 45 malt liquor. Here comes that second bottle. It's called Mohawk Blackberry Brandy. And I start drinking on that blackberry brandy. And what I can tell you about the first time drinking at the age of 13 years old is this. I black out. I puked purple for 2 weeks. I took a beating from my father. My mother grounded me for life, but the hook was in. I found the magic elixir for the thing that's going to solve this hole in my soul. This thing that, and I don't know these things. I'm 13 years old. What the hell is wrong with me? I'm 13 years old. But I believe we all have that moment in our lives. I believe we all have that moment when some things shift in our life. And what happened to me was, I'm growing up. I'm growing up in this family, and my mom always wanted the best for all her kids. So she took us out of the public school system, and I was in 5th grade at the time, and she put us into the Catholic school system. And in 5th grade, I had all these friends. I had all these things we did. We played sports. We did a lot of ball. We did a lot of things. And now my mom takes me away from them and puts me with the Catholic kids. And I don't know any of those kids. And this fear and this insecurity and this rage inside me is getting louder and louder. Amy talked about that last night. The judge in my head was talking to me all the time. And at the age of 13, going into 6th grade, I pick up a drink because I think that's going to solve my problem. And what I don't know and what I don't realize, like many of you in this room tonight, I stepped on a path that went straight to hell. I stepped on that path that takes us to pitiful, incomprehensible demoralization, of full-blown alcoholism and homelessness on the streets. And I didn't intend to be that way. I intended to be somebody. Like everyone in this room, I have goals, I have dreams, I have aspirations. I want to be somebody. I don't want to be a union worker. Nothing wrong with that. I became a union worker. But I just wanted something. I wanted to escape my mind. I wanted to escape my parents. I just wanted to get out. And what happened to me is, like all of us in this room tonight, that slow, steady walk of progression. Not only did my drinking get progressive, but my behaviors got progressive. And I grew up in an age when my mom would open up the door at 8 o'clock in the morning, and she knew we'd eat and come home eventually, and we would come home. But most of my life was spent on the streets. Hanging out with guys that I shouldn't be hanging out with. And all of a sudden, the people that were important in my life, my parents, my brothers, my uncles, they weren't important anymore. Who was important was the older guys. The most important guy in the neighborhood was the bookie. I used to see that guy pull up with his Cadillac, and he always had a nice, good-looking girl. He always had a wad of money, and he always had that elastic band. That was an important thing, that elastic band, around that money. To this day, I'm still walking around with an elastic band around my money. I don't know. I don't know why I want to be a bookie. I mean, Jason took my money playing left, right, center last night. But this is the way I was raised, and what happened to me, my parents gave me everything I ever needed, but man, I just pushed it in their face. I just pushed it in their face. I just pushed it in his face. I didn't want to talk about anything. I was shut down as a 14-year-old, 15-year-old. By the time I'm 16 years old, I'm drinking every day with my friends. I'm drinking before school. I'm drinking after school. I'm getting in a lot of trouble. I'm starting to get locked up. My dad never sat me down and said, hey, this is how you steal a car or rob a house or we used to rob freight trains all the time. This was the way of life that I was raised on. And as I drank and my behavior got worse and my drinking got worse, by the time I'm 18 years old, I'm an everyday drunk. And I'm not drinking to get loaded every day. I'm just drinking because the alcoholic life seems the normal one. I'm surrounded by guys just like me. And I think it's normal to drink around the clock and get in trouble and get arrested and all that stuff that we do, or I do, And what happens to me is, I go to a prep school. I'm in this prep school. My parents always try to give me a good education. I go to this prep school with all these Jesuits. I'm dressed like this all the time, And I'm in school. And I tell you this story for a reason. I'm about 17 years old. I'm drinking a lot. I'm in high school, and this priest comes up to me, and he kind of questions me about something. And I got in a little bit of an argument with him, and he threw me out of the classroom. And, I went back into the classroom, and he came at me, and I grabbed this priest, and I knocked him out. That's right. I didn't go to hell right away, but I tell you that for a specific reason, not to get a laugh and not to get a joke, because that earmarked a very important part of my life. That's the day I became my father. That's the day I either got angry at it or I drank at it. And everything in my life from that point till I landed in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I either drank at it or I got angry at it. Those were my two emotions, or my two ways, black and white. There was never a gray thing. I never looked at things and thought about it. I never considered anyone. I just got angry at it or I drank at it, I went on to a college in Pennsylvania. I like to call it the greatest 10 years of my life. I went with 9 other friends from my hometown, but the truth of the matter is I'm drinking around the clock, and I got asked to leave after 1 year, and I come back to New Jersey, and what's a guy like me going to do? No education, no trade, no real hook to get into a union job. So I start this life of just sitting in a bar every day, hoping for someone to come in and to give me a life, having plans, having ideas. But what I don't understand at this early time in my life, what I don't understand, like many of us when we come into Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm taking that first drink. The first drink's getting me loaded. Now, when I landed in AA and you guys say, hey, Jimmy, the first drink gets you loaded, I thought that was the most ridiculous thing I ever heard in my life. It's those last 20 drinks. It's the outside issues I'm doing. That's the reason why I am the way. But I didn't understand that stuff. So I would sit in a bar day by day by day by day, and I would just drink and have these plans to go out and get a job and all this stuff, be a good son. I had a lot of shame. I had a lot of guilt. I had a lot of remorse. All these emotions that I didn't even know how to put words to what I felt inside. They were running my life. And I'm a double-edged sword guy. Because I'm the guy that blames everyone for the way I feel deep down inside. But I'm also that guy that's always searching, seeking something out there to make myself feel better in here. And whether it's drinking, whether it's drugs, whether it's women, whether it's cars, whether it's money, I'm always playing those two sides of the street. And I'm always trying to fill myself with something out there, this materialistic viewpoint of life, that if I have that, I'll be okay. It's nothing more than a delusion. Matter of fact, I come to Alcoholics Anonymous, I find out something very, very astonishing, that alcoholism doesn't come in a bottle. It comes in my mind. My mind is filled with a lot of delusions about a lot of things. So here I am in a bar one day, and I see a pretty girl against a wall. Ladies, this is how I do relationships. I see the pretty girl, I grab my sister, I say, I'll buy an illegal substance if you introduce me to her. She does, I buy the substance, and 4 months later I'm married. And that's how I do relationships. Irresponsible, non-caring, don't even like her, don't like me. But the mind is so powerful. The alcoholic mind is so powerful because I'm under the delusion that if I just get married, settle down, do all the things we do, I'm going to be okay. What I don't understand is I have the inability not to take that first drink. What I don't understand is that alcohol is running my life. But I'm under this delusion. It's not even a denial. It's under this delusion that drinking's not a problem. Whenever something comes up in my life and I think it's a problem, it's your fault, it's her fault, it's their fault, it's the boss's fault. And I jump into this marriage. And 4 months into this marriage, I walk out of this marriage because that's what cowards do. And I walk out of this marriage because drinking's more important than being a married man. And I take off for a place called Boca Raton, Florida. Now, somewhere along the lines, God cracked my skull open, and in my skull, He put this chalkboard. And on this chalkboard, there was these three emotions of shame, guilt, and remorse. And it seemed up to the age of 25, I always had this, something always led to one of those emotions. The shame of not being a good son, the shame of walking out of a marriage, the shame of failing out of school. Shame, shame, shame. Alcoholics have shame-based identities. I didn't know that. The remorse of the people I was hurting, the remorse of the things I was doing, the guilt of the people, the guilt of walking out. And I go down to Florida, and I'm sitting in this beautiful apartment on the ocean. It's a condo. I'm getting that knock that we all knock. The four horsemen are at the door every day of terror, frustration, bewilderment, despair. But see, I'm still under that delusion that I have the answer to all my problems. It's called Johnny Walker Red. And all I had to do was crack the seal of the body of this bottle. And when I take that first drink, guess what happens? The grandiosity comes back. And all of a sudden, it's her fault. It's your fault. It's their fault. It's everyone else's fault. And that's my existence at 25 years old. I decided to come back to New Jersey, and I was so guilt-ridden by my actions. I was so shameful of the things I was doing. I made a decision when I came back to New Jersey is to live on the streets. And for the next 19 months of my life, I lived on the streets of northern New Jersey and lower Manhattan. And I would jump that turnstile, and I would do all the things we do. It's the dark walk of the night. When you walk around and you just want to kill yourself, and you're just drinking yourself to death. And I would jump those turnstiles, and I would panhandle, and I would steal, and it was dehumanizing, pitiful, incomprehensible demoralization. Doesn't do it justice. It ruined me as a human being in that time. I didn't know what was wrong with me. And as I walked those streets, blind and lost and everything else, I just wanted somebody to kill me. But I had the solution. It's called alcohol. And every time I took that drink, it just took the edge off a little bit. And what happened to me is I walked in a bar one night, and I don't remember if I was going to steal the bar or rob the bar or panhandle or whatever, but I walk in the bar. I'm 29 years old now, living on the streets close to 2 years. Same clothes, hair down to my back, beard down to here. Dehumanizing. I took one of these balls, these clear balls, like a basketball of glass, and I just dropped it, and it hit the floor. It would shatter. That was my life, shattered. I couldn't understand why I was in a position. This wasn't the game plan. What's wrong with me? I didn't understand. And what happened was, I walked in this bar, and this old guy comes up to me and goes, "Hey, Jimmy, you got to go to Newark Airport. They're hiring guys like you." Oh, finally, being seen for my potential. Guys like me, guys like you, guys like us. And that next morning, I went to Newark Airport with two other guys. We're all in AA today. We stole a car, and we went to Newark Airport. And I tell you that because we all made amends to the guy we stole the car of. It was hysterical. I mean, it was one of the funniest things we did, but... And I go into Newark Airport. The room I was in was as big as this room right here. People all over the place. You could imagine a major airport, how big it was. And there was an airline called People's Express back then. I know Sandy remembers that name. Some of you guys remember that name. The People's Express would hire guys like us. And what we would do is hopefully get the luggage that's over there onto the plane that's over there. This is where I like to segue and just let you know that if you flew through Newark Airport in the 80s and you're still waiting for your luggage, I'll make amends later. I'm a mess. And they didn't care who they were hiring back then. And I remember that day, that guy said to me, "Why don't you just go outside and sit down?" And I sit down in a big room like this with people walking all over the place. In the abyss of all these people, man, my head was just spinning. I could never explain or I could never talk about how I felt in that moment. I'm 29 years old, dying of this thing I don't even know I'm dying from. I'm sitting in the airport. It wasn't until I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and eventually opened up that blue book. When I turn to page 8 and I read Bill's story, Bill puts his first step experience in print, and he really explains all our first step experience. When he talks about no words could tell of the loneliness and despair I felt in a bitter morass of self-pity. Quicksand stretched around me in all directions. I met my match. I've been overwhelmed. Alcohol was my master, and for the first time in my life, I sat in that airport thinking maybe drinking is a problem. As I sat at that airport, I could feel the wind blow through the hole of my soul. I sat in that room when all of a sudden, a complete stranger sat next to me in the middle of Newark Airport. And after a few minutes, he asked me a question that most people were asking me at that time. What's wrong with you? I never knew why I spit up, or I never knew why I replied to this guy. I know it today. It's called God's grace. Because I looked at this complete stranger and I spit up my life story on this guy in about 10 minutes. And he looked at me and said, hey, I have the solution for you. I said, what's that? Pre-cell phone, pre-beeper days. He pulled out a piece of paper. He wrote down the street, goes, you know where the street is? I said, yeah, that's my old neighborhood. Then he asked me a very strange question. He says, is it possible for you not to take a drink the rest of this day? And I was honest with the guy. I said, I want to drink right now. It's like 10 o'clock in the morning. He said, here, take this piece of paper. He put a number in front of that street, 153 Linden Avenue, my old neighborhood. And he said, try not to drink and be in front of that address at 7 o'clock tonight. All I could tell you is, but for the grace of God, at 7 o'clock that night, stone cold sober, I stood in front of that address. My knees were knocking, my belly was churning, my mind was talking to me. I was asking myself, did I even meet somebody? I was so delusional, I don't even know if I met somebody. Is this really happening? What am I standing here for? When all of a sudden, a 1979 Chevy Impala pulled up, and the stranger was driving that car. And he had a whole bunch of other strangers in that car. And when he pulled up to me, he rolled down that window and he said, the most spiritual thing we'll ever hear in Alcoholics Anonymous, get in the car. Right? And they took me around the corner to my grammar school. It was less than 500 yards, but that's what the old timers did back in the day. They didn't trust you, so they got you in the car. And they walked me into my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and walking into grace doesn't feel like walking into grace. It was feeling like I was walking out of total chaos. They walked me into my grammar school, that place where I had all sorts of contempt towards God, towards religion, towards my Catholicism, towards anything of goodness. I hated. And they walked me into that meeting. And they walked me down those gray battleship painted stairs that I think every Catholic school in America has. I could still smell the smell of that paint. It was March 28th, 1987. And as I walked down those stairs, I looked into that cafeteria. And I remember being a sixth grader, a seventh grader, an eighth grader. I had those dreams, I had those goals, I wanted to be somebody, and that came back to me. I remember this to this day. Well, the problem was I took that first drink. And as I started to walk down the hall, I started to smell the coffee in the air. Now that's being generous. The coffee in the air. Old guys, you might remember this. Old timers, you might remember this. Young guys, pull out your phone. You can Google this. There was a thing called Sanka, right? The astronauts used to drink Sanka. I don't know how it wound up in AA, but that's what we got, was Sanka. Well, for the sake of the talk, it was coffee in the air. And as I got close to that meeting room door, I met the most important person you'll ever meet in Alcoholics Anonymous. We call him the greeter. That man put his hand out to me, and I grabbed that flimsy reed, and he pulled me into you. And I've been with you 36 years now. Matter of fact, I came in the room this morning. Thank you. I came in the room this morning with 25 years, but after that raffle and the countdown, I have 36 years now. Thus starts the journey in Alcoholics Anonymous. That stranger became my first sponsor. That group, the Jersey City Young People, became my home group. Problem solved. I didn't have to go through the interview process of finding a home group and a sponsor. I had them first day, even though I didn't know what they were, you know? And I always like to talk about these guys because these were guys that were just middle-aged guys. They were old guys. They were like 45 years old. They had wives. They had kids. It was a different generation. It was a different time. You know, they were just guys, man. And we didn't talk about the book. We didn't even know there was a book. I don't even know what we were talking about, you know. I always like to say they didn't know the difference between a phone book and a big book. But these were the kind of men that would be on your porch if you ever needed something. The kindness of strangers. That's what we have here, the kindness of strangers, the people who go to any length to help us, right? When we land in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that first day, I'm in that meeting, and that greeter says to me, hey, sit up front, gave me a half a cup of coffee. But he gave something to me, I look back now, he gave something to me that is so important for us to give to any person that walks through those doors. He gave me a piece of dignity that day. Because he didn't care what I looked like, he didn't care that I smelled, he didn't care that every other word was a profanity out of my mouth. He said, hey kid, just keep coming back, we need you. And Justin, wherever you are sitting out there, just please keep coming back, we need guys like you, man. And we don't pick anyone else. You have 1 day or 2 days, I'm just thinking about you because my son's name is Justin. And I would pray to God that when he came to, if he needed these rooms one day, that we would be there with an extended hand and a cup of coffee. So here I am on day one. I got a group, I got a home group, I got new friends. I don't know anyone's name. Back in the old days, there was no, phone, take numbers. They gave you a little meeting book card. And in that address book, you would write everyone's name. They said, write everyone's name. I still have that book. I opened that book. Tomato Tony, Frank the Fireman, Joe, not one last name. We all had nicknames back there. I used to be called Angry Jimmy. Anyone have it? A lot of us get tagged with that nickname for the first couple of years, right? So I was Angry Jimmy for a little while. I'm punching walls, I'm hitting, I learned how to sheetrock really good, Day two, kindness of strangers. They put me up in a motel for a week. They knew I had nothing. They went to a department store. They bought me jeans, they bought me T-shirts, they bought me sneakers. On day two, they come and pick me up, and I shared an emotion. Come on, Jim, what are you talking about, shared an emotion? Yeah, I shared an emotion. See, I'm a street guy. I'm shut down emotionally. I'm shut down in every possible way you could imagine. I don't know how to talk about anything. This guy, Richie Yes, pulls up and he says, you ready to go? And I said, Joe, I got to tell you something. He goes, what's that? I go, I want to drink. And what I witnessed is what a trusted servant in Alcoholics Anonymous does. Called up his wife, said, take me off the calendar today. I'm with a new guy. Took me to 3 meetings, fed me 3 times. I drank 700 cups of coffee. And I felt part of Alcoholics Anonymous. Day 7, can remember like it happened yesterday. I'm in my new home group with my new friends, my new sponsor, my new home group, all these things. I don't know what the hell's going on still. I'm in a fog. And we're having a business meeting. And Richie's excited. He runs up to me and says, I want you to take the job. I said, what job? He goes, ashtray cleaner. Ashtray cleaner. And in my mind, I'm like, I said some things in my mind that I didn't say to him, obviously. And I had a perfect reason for that. I have put every substance of everything in my body. But I have, to this day, never smoked a cigarette in my life. So why do I have to clean ashtrays? I didn't get it. I didn't get the old timers. I didn't get that they were trying to give us a responsibility to be part of. But I listened to something that I never listened to before. The thing that right now in this moment everyone in this place has, it's that small voice within. And that small voice said something like this guy's trying to help you, trust him. And what I could tell you is from that moment, at day 7, to this moment, I've been tethered to Alcoholics Anonymous through a commitment. Whether it's been in my home group, whether it's been in my district, whether it's been in my area, I've been connected to Alcoholics Anonymous because of the work that we do in these rooms. Thank God for those old times that knew that I needed to do something in here to stay, that I couldn't hang out on the fringes of Alcoholics Anonymous. Hey, let me tell you something. We have enough spectators. We need players in Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's what they told me. And I got to tell you guys, man, my life came back quick, man. I healed physically quick. I got back. Matter of fact, I got back with that wife. And, I got a real job. I had money in my pocket. I got my first sober car. Life looked beautiful. I even got a house. I had everything. It came back so fast for me. I was so fortunate. And to the untrained eye, it looked like normal living is the solution to alcoholism. I'm asked to give a talk on the second step at a meeting in North Jersey. I come to a podium and I'm lying to every one of you because I'm paralyzed by what you think of me. I still got that belly as a 6-year-old filled with fear and anger and rage and all that other stuff, insecurity. I'm at the podium, I'm lying to all of you. I read the 12 and 12. I could tell you some jokes. I could throw some lines out. And at the end of that talk, what happened was a guy walked up to me, and I think, we shake hands. Thanks for coming, thanks for coming. He walks up to me. I'm pretty tall. He was pretty tall, and he looked me eyeball to eyeball. I think he's going to shake my hand, and he doesn't. He just looks at me and goes, "You're screwed." And that's being polite, what he really said. It was a little bit saltier. See, here I am in a room of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I step back because I think I'm going to hit this guy. See, I don't know how to face resistance with no resistance. I don't know how to face confrontation without violence. I don't know how to do any of that stuff. I'm under the delusion that abstinence is the solution to a spiritual malady that I'm suffering from. I think that I'm not drinking, I'm doing okay. And don't get me wrong, not drinking is okay. But alcoholism needs more than just not drinking. I'm under that delusion that abstinence is the solution to a spiritual malady. So I step back and I look at this guy, Bill Grace, from St. Paul, Minnesota, the same place my sponsor is from today, ironically. And I look in his eyes and I said, "You're right, I need help." And I find myself in a railroad room apartment on the Hudson River on the Jersey side looking over Manhattan. And I'm starting to get the spiritual test we get. I'm sitting in this apartment and this guy, he has this Jack, what's a Jack? It's a dog, Jack. Whew, that came fast. Yeah, you know what kind of dog. They're crazy dogs. Yeah. It's like giving a newcomer 40 cups of coffee and saying, "Hey, have a nice day." The dog is running the walls, and this guy's peppering me with some questions. First question he asked me, "Jimmy, how long can you hold your breath?" How long can you hold your breath? How long can you be in a 12-step program and not work the 12 steps? What's your relationship with God look like? Well, I'm a Catholic, I believe in God, but what does God have to do with any of this? What makes you alcoholic, he asked me. And the best I could stammer out of my mouth is, I drink too much. I had no idea about the physical allergy, I had no idea about the mental obsession, I certainly had no idea about the unmanageability, the spiritual thing that's deep down in every one of us. He asked me a question some of you guys might not believe, but this is the way it was in my neighborhood in the late 80s and 90s, early 90s. He said, "Where's your big book?" And I looked at him and I said, "What's a big book?" I'm sure they were at a podium, I'm sure they were at a literature table, I'm sure they were everywhere. Well, we didn't open that book back then. That's just the way it was in my neighborhood. It wasn't until Joe and Charlie came through the Northeast in 1992 in Harlem, New York, that people got jacked up and fired up and started to use the book like a weapon. You better do it this way, that thing, I know we all go through that little stage, right? I'm not doing it, but you better, that thing. Now, I'm not embarrassed by my answers. I'm probably more embarrassed to let you know I was 5 years sober in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous at the time. Dying from something I didn't even know I was dying from. Dying of something we don't even talk about back then. It's called untreated alcoholism. And what happened to me was this guy sat me down at a kitchen table. And he started to paint a picture of what this really looks about. He talked about the 2 goals of Alcoholics Anonymous. His opinion, my opinion today, the same goals. We have 2 goals here. First goal, the obvious one, don't pick up the first drink. But the second goal is the one I think we all want to attain, and that's to step into the sunlight of the Spirit. Because that's the place. That's the place where we have freedom. That's the place where the bondage of self gets removed. That's the place where I have a relationship with God and a partnership with you. That's a place where I'm free. I'm free. But in order to get out there into the sunlight of the Spirit, I got to walk through the darkness of my life. And he painted that picture for me. Jimmy, you're not going to be free until you uncover, discover, discard the things that are blocking you. To do something that I thought was a weakness, but is really strength in disguise. I heard it from Heather yesterday, and that's to be vulnerable. I thought that was a weakness. Tough guys like me are not vulnerable. I want to just push everything down and then explode when I need to explode. And as you read that yesterday, I just thought about that day when I knew I had to start talking to another man. I had to talk to a sponsor. I had to get this garbage out of me because all I was getting sicker in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And he started to explain that thing about this allergy, about this obsession. We opened up that chapter to Doctor's Opinion. We started to read that chapter. I live right by Silkworth's grave in New Jersey. We go to that gravesite all the time. We bring people there all the time. I can't tell you how many times I've passed Glenwood Cemetery in West Long Branch, New Jersey, and I'll pass by and I'll look in that cemetery and I see that big oak tree and his grave is right below that oak tree. And who do I see? I see you guys in there. I see you in 2 beach chairs or 2 folding chairs, and I see one drunk talking to another, because that's really our basic service, one drunk talking to another. And I see the magic happening all the time there. So here I am with this guy, and he's reading this story to me. He's telling me about this thing that I suffer from. It's just not about abstinence, Jimmy. It's about a spiritual malady that's deep down inside you. And I started to understand something about the second step, about this relationship with God. He said, Jim, nowhere in our literature does it say AA is about getting us to quit drinking. It says quite the opposite. You can't stop drinking. Lack of power is your problem. You have no mental defense against the first drink. That was new language to me. But AA is really designed for all of us to be introduced to a higher power of our own understanding, to have that spiritual experience, to go through those 12 steps. And as he started to explain the we agnostics to me, after we got done with that chapter, he said, let's get on your knees. Get on your knees for what? I've been in many, many prayer circles up to this point, closing a meeting with the Lord's Prayer, the Serenity Prayer, whatever prayer it was. This guy wanted to take a third step with me. And I was amazed that he knew the words to that third step. I had to open up a book and read the third step. But I got to tell you what happened to me on that day. Something happened. This feeling just happened. I said those words and I held his hands. I was a little embarrassed, but what I could feel is his spirit into my spirit. And as I sit with countless guys, and guys I sponsor, you know, I sit at my house on the Jersey Shore, you know, and it's amazing to me. We'll sit at my kitchen table, I'll point to a glass door that's the end of my hallway, and I said, there's the freedom. All you need to do is walk through that door. But in order to walk through that door, you got to walk through the darkness of this hallway. One of our greatest readings ever, I'll tell you, it's in one of our books called Daily Reflections. And if you turn to the day of May 1st, it says this: it's the side of myself that I refuse to look at that rules me. I must be willing to look at the dark side in order to heal my mind and my heart, because that's the road to freedom. I must walk into darkness to find the light, and walk into fear to find peace. The old timers used to say it like this: Jimmy, Alcoholics Anonymous is like a big bonfire. Most people are walking around the fire. But if you really want to change, if you really want a relationship with God, and you really want to have a new life, you got to walk through that fire and get your ass burnt and feel the uncomfortability of change. And see, what that man couldn't do for me today, and I can't do for anyone in this room, and you can't do it for me, is give you willingness. Willingness is an inside job. And what makes us willing? Well, in my case, it was a good whooped ass at 5 years without a drink in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was willing to walk into that darkness of my life. I was willing to look at those common manifestations of living a life on self-will. All this anger I walked around with since I'm 6 years old is in me still. All this fear, all these harms, all this remorse, the unhealthy dependencies I put on, especially women. I need you to make me feel good, so I'm okay. I mean, the unreal expectations we put on people to live the life we think they should be living, trying to control and manipulate life to suit ourselves. I didn't understand that stuff till this gentleman sat with me. I didn't understand how damaging living on the streets was for me. I can't even explain. I needed therapy. It ruined me. It almost killed me living on the streets. And then the remorse I had of the people I hurt. I was sober a year. I was living on the streets for 1 year, and I walked in a bar one night, and I saw my sister who just turned 21. I haven't seen her in years. And I walked up to my sister in the bar. I said, Barbara. She looked at me, and I said, it's your brother, Jimmy. She didn't even know it was me. She almost fainted. And we don't think we're hurting anyone. That was one of the hardest amends I had to make when I had to sit down and talk to her. Her big brother, the guy that just walked away from life, the guy that walked away from the family. So here I am, I'm going through the steps, I'm doing all these things that we do, and my life is starting to get better. My life is starting to get better. I write that inventory, and then I had probably the most powerful day other than my 2 children being born. It was my original fifth step. I've done many fifth steps since, but this day was different. This day is the day I sat with Bill Grace and I gave this man my life. I became vulnerable that day. I knew that I could not ever walk through that door of freedom with a secret in my back pocket, so I gave him everything. It was a long talk. And after that talk was done, I went down to a place. I didn't go home, put the book on a shelf and pull it down. I went to a place called Liberty State Park, which is on the Jersey side of the Hudson River, looking over Manhattan. And I walked out on the pier and I sat down and I opened up the book like we're instructed, and I started to read the first 5 steps, all the stones properly in place. You know the language. And all of a sudden I looked to my right. And less than a quarter mile to my right was the Statue of Liberty. I looked across the river, and what I see is the World Trade Center. And when I looked to my left, I saw Ellis Island. Symbols of freedom. And here I sat as a 32-year-old man with tears coming down my eyes. Because for the first time in my life, I knew I was going to be okay because I was with you. I knew that there was an infancy of a transformation going on. I knew something was different. I knew I felt different. I knew I thought different. I knew something was happening to me. Couldn't put it into words. I just knew that I sat there crying my eyes out, and tough guys like me don't cry their eyes out. Something was happening to me. It was Alcoholics Anonymous working through you into me through God. It was unbelievable. And I like to tell you that I got on this spiritual rocket ship called life, and I just kept on going up, up, up and away. That's not my story, and I don't know many people like that. My recovery over the last many years is grow, hit a wall, grow, hit a wall, grow, hit a wall. And I think it's intended to be that way, so we can grow and we can surrender and more surrender and more surrender and more surrender. You know, and 10 years sober, you know, I'm not proud of this. I even hate mentioning this, but this is my story. I walked out of my marriage. The woman I put through hell, I walked out of that marriage again. And I walked into the arms of a woman in AA, the woman who understands. And within 3 years, I blew up my life. See, what I didn't understand is, even though I had that experience, I started to drift a little bit. I fell for the biggest trap we have in Alcoholics Anonymous. I fell prey to comfortability. All of a sudden, overtime became important, you know, coaching baseball, coaching basketball, all those things which are great to do. I just didn't see that I was drifting out of Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't see that my primary purpose was being, you know, replaced with other things. I always like to describe it. I live on the ocean. You know, we take the boat out on the ocean, you know, and if I point that boat east, I see the most beautiful sunrises every morning of the day, like you guys see the sunset. And if I point that boat and I just look like at that back wall back there, right? I see the curvature of the earth. I see the sun come up. And what I don't see, like a lot of us in Alcoholics Anonymous or in our recovery, I don't see that I'm drifting. I think it was John talked about being off 1 degree, 1 degree, 1 degree. I don't see that I'm going from town to town to town because I'm looking that way and I'm not looking behind me. I'm not looking to help that newcomer anymore. Life is more important. It's all about me all over again. At 10 years, I do what I do. And I blow up my life. I'm the guy that the book talks about. I build a beautiful spiritual structure for me and my family, and I tear it down with a senseless series of sprees. Let me tell you, if you're new in here, you don't need to be drinking to blow your life up in Alcoholics Anonymous, that's for sure. Just sponsor people, you'll find that out. You know? And at 13 years of sobriety, dry as a bone, holding on to secrets again, filled with anger again, insecurity again, living in fear again, giving my sponsor about 20% of what's really going on again. I walk in a bar, 13 years sober. I understand what Dr. Bob talks about in his nightmare, when he's stuck between a rock and a hard place, because I didn't want to drink, but I really needed a drink. The pain of living the way I was living was killing me. And what happened was I ordered a drink. Bartender, give me a drink. 13 years sober. I could feel the devil and the angel pop out. Drink it, don't drink it, drink it, don't drink it. It's almost like I was in a blackout. And I'm staring down this glass of gin and tonic. And I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at it. All of a sudden, a hand goes around it and pulls the drink back. And when I look up, it happens to be a bartender who's a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. What are you doing here? Well, apparently throwing my life away. What do you think? I take my tail, I put it between my legs, and off I go. 2 weeks later, I'm in a workshop, a meeting in my hometown. And it's amazing how the human ego will reemerge again, right? Grow again. You know, 2 weeks early, I want to drink. 2 weeks later, I'm in a meeting, and this guy's doing a workshop, and I'm judging him. Oh, this guy's too good to be true, you know? But that man became my sponsor, and, to fasten this up, he sponsored me for the next 17 years of my life, and he started to peel that onion back. I had to peel that onion back. I had to go deeper in this spiritual journey like I never did before. I started to look at things I never looked at. How many times do we say to the newcomer, "Are you willing to go to any length for victory over alcohol?" And like a bobblehead doll, yep, and we don't even explain what any lengths look like. Well, how many times do we do the same thing with our literature when it says 15, 22 times, "Are you willing to lay aside your old ideas about everything?" I didn't understand what that meant. I didn't understand that. I was walking through life with a lot of old ideas about a lot of things, what my life should look like, whether it's relationships, whether it's family, whether it's work, whether it's money, or even Alcoholics Anonymous, until I started to examine that stuff and started to peel the covers off that stuff to see how angry I was still and how much conflict I had in my mind, and had led to the emotions and the attitudes that I was walking around with. I was so blinded again, and how easy that could happen. But I went through the steps with this guy, and I started to go through a lot of things. I went through a divorce with that woman. I did, like a lot of us, a lot of adversities in our life. I met my wife here. Where is she? She's right down here. Mary Beth was a member of the World Trade Center group. It was called the Towers Group. It was held every day in the World Trade Center. And when 9/11 hit, she wasn't there that day, but a lot of our members perished. Their life perished, And I think about that all the time, because she just gave a talk when they had the 20-year anniversary. It was the most unbelievable thing to see all these people come back that moved out of New York City and, talked about Alcoholics Anonymous and talked about us and talked about you, the importance of all of that stuff. So here I am, we get married. She asked me to come over and do a little pitch like this, lunch, coffee, and all of a sudden we're engaged to get married, and we'll be married 19 years this year, and, it's incredible what God could do for you when you surrender, right? Went through the steps with this guy, Peter. Started to look at steps 6 and 7 like I never looked before. I think most of us come in here like a pendulum. One day is great, the next day. I had to learn to get that pendulum to stop swinging so broadly. I had to get to the place that Bill Wilson talks about when he says it's the right size. To get that pendulum to stop going so far left and right, right? To get to that place where he calls in that great essay about the next frontier, that place where I can experience, where we could all experience emotional sobriety. Well, yeah, there's a little bit of wiggle room in that. Life is tough, adversities. There's not a person sitting in this room, I heard it this weekend, that have not gone through a hard time in sobriety. We're not immune from life. I thought I would be when I walked in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Like I said, I went through a divorce, I had money problems, I had all this stuff. 1999, December 6th, I'm in a horrific accident. I work for the Highway Authority. I get in a horrific accident. The last day I worked, I was 40 years old. Since 2001, I've had 41 operations. I've had 12 back operations, 3 knee replacements, on and on and on. I'm almost a doctor, really, to be honest with you. If you have any medical problems, just come see me. I can talk to you about it. Truth of the matter is, I'm really 5'8", but after all the metal, I'm 6'4". It's a miracle. But I go through that, and I get retired. And I walked around AA with a walker for 3 years. You would have thought I was 129 years old. My dad dies. I'm 18 months sober. 18 months sober. I walk in my parents' house and I found my father dead. I've seen dead people, but this is different. I see my father on the floor. And I'm programmed, because we do a lot of 12-step calls back in those days. Call my sponsor and say, "What do I do?" He goes, "Okay, call 911 and let's pray." And we start praying, and all of a sudden the first cop shows up. And the cop's taking the information down, and all of a sudden he looks at me and goes, "I don't see you walking the streets anymore." I don't do that anymore. A little bit more information. "I don't see you drinking anymore." Nope. AA, 18 months sober. A little bit more information. "Tell me how you do that." I know how to do a 12-step call, because that's all we did back in the old days. I wound up 12-stepping this cop over my dead father's body. Now, I tell you this for this reason. God will use you without your permission. 2 months ago in my home group, I'm with the guys, we're talking about nothing. I get a tap on my shoulder. When I turned around, it just happened to be that cop who's now retired to let me know that he just celebrated 34 years of sobriety. So when you think, what's the purpose of this? There's a purpose in everything. And I found out. My mom was 90 years old. My mom never got remarried. My mom's old school. She never drove a car. She moves down by the Jersey Shore. We're taking care of her a lot. 90 years old. My mom's a Jane Fonda workout freak. 86 years old. I'm in a sports store buying weights because the 1 and 3 are too light. I have to get her the 3, the 5 and the 8s. She's got the, who's that guy that used to, whatever. Yeah, there you go, Richard Simmons. Yeah, dancing to the tunes, right? Doctor comes to us. Hey, your mom needs a knee replacement. She's 90 years old. What are you kidding me? 90 years, nothing wrong with her. Other than giving birth to 5 kids, she's never been in a hospital. She's not sick. She needs a knee replacement. So, all right, we'll get her a knee replacement. She has a knee replacement, but what we don't understand and what we find out is that when you put under anesthesia at that late age, dementia starts to kick in real bad. I don't know if anyone in this room ever became the parent of your parent. It was one of the most difficult things for us to deal with. My mom was losing her mind. My mom was so smart. My mom read books. My mom was a go-getter. And we just watched her shrink and shrink and shrink. We watched the brain just get squeezed out of any kind of fluid. And we couldn't handle it anymore. And we put her in assisted living. And COVID hit. And the whole place got COVID. I just had my 3rd knee replacement. I'm in physical therapy, and the doctor and the hospice nurse calls me up and says, "You need to get to the assisted living place. Your mom's going to go." Thank God for Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank God for your stories. Thank God for the evidence around me of the people who have gone through hard times, because I walked into that place to see my mom. Now, I don't know what she looks like. It's been months because of COVID. I haven't seen her. I don't understand that dementia makes you stop eating. I don't know what my mother's going to look like. I think she's going to look like a 60-year-old woman that I remember. My sisters had hit me up on the phone, put her on FaceTime. I take the test, put the PPE on, then I walk in. And what do I see is a skeleton laying in a bed. I'm horrified. I'm horrified by what I see. It's not my mom. Hospice nurse says, "Jimmy, she's not going to open her eyes, she's not going to open her mouth, but she'll hear you when you speak." And in my mind, this is like such a foreign thing going on. I don't even understand what she's telling me. So I sit. Thank God I heard your stories through the years. Thank God I didn't make this about me. And I sit and I grab a hand. The hand was like a bone. And I said, "Hi, Mom." And all of a sudden, the oxygen, boom, exploded in her chest. She knew her son was there. My mom has been the great enabler. My mom has gotten me out of every jam, every jailhouse, you name it. My mom's there. And now the roles are reversed. You ever wonder if God hears your prayers? I wondered that. I wondered that for a long time. Does God really hear what we say? We all pray, we all meditate, we all get on our knees. Does God really hear my prayers? What I learned about this experience was this. As I held my mom's hands and I told her I loved her, and I made amends 27, I don't even know how long ago. I sat with my mom and I just told her about love. Just told her about you. I just told her about the life that I've been given because of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been saying this prayer forever. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there's hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love, for it is giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we impart, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. I was able to hold my mother's hand and let her go to my dad. I wouldn't know how to do that without the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I wouldn't know how to do that. There's no way, a guy like me, I'm not that smart. Powerful, powerful things we learn in here if we're in the middle of this deal. It's unbelievable the path that God puts you on. I'm going to end up with this little story here. 2006, we decided to join the group. Me and my wife decided to start a group down on the Jersey Shore. We had 12 people come over to my house, put a steering committee together, and on, like Bill talks about, on the Anvil experience of writing the traditions, we're trying to put a format together of a big book study that we wanted to put together in our neighborhood. And as we put that format together, we went to prayer. We prayed that God would, allow 30 people to come to our first meeting. Our first night, we had 175 people at that meeting. We average every Sunday night anywhere between 250 and 300 people. A pocket of enthusiasm. You walk in the room and there's two girls sitting over there reading, guys over there reading, a bunch of guys at the coffee pot talking about Jason. I mean, it's a great place. And that's 3,000 miles away and we know about him. And we were sober, and the meeting was 1 year long, and they said, we need a GSR. Ugh. Reluctantly. 19 years sober, I raised my hand, I'll be the GSR. I don't know nothing about service. Matter of fact, we only had 2 people in my town that were doing service. One guy's name, they're both cops. One guy's name was, and newcomers, you could pull out your phone on this one. One cop's name was Jackie Gleason, and his sponsor was Mickey Rooney. No kidding. So I become this GSR, and I go to this regional convention down in Maryland, and I'm terrified, as many people as here today. And I walk in there, and something happened to me on that weekend. I saw the big picture of Alcoholics Anonymous. I met 2 men. I came under their wings. One guy was a United States trustee at large. We only had one of them in AA, and the other one was a Northeast Regional trustee. And this guy, John Q, was my service sponsor today. He handed me a service manual, a real reader if you want to read something. He says, all I want you to do is read S20. It's a little excerpt from a guy by the name of Bernard Smith, who was a non-alcoholic Class A trustee. He's the guy that put the structure together with Bill Wilson. He was Bill Wilson's lawyer. And in that little excerpt, why do we have a conference? Why do we do the things they do? It's not to ensure our sobriety. We're here today. I know you guys know what to do when that newcomer comes to the door. But what he talks about is the person who's walking out there right now. Because I can guarantee you right now in Seaside, Oregon, there's a person cracking a bottle of Jack Daniels right now, ready to wash his day away and not knowing that there's 600 men in here that have a solution to his problem. Right now in Seaside, Oregon, there's a single mom who can't wait to put those kids down for a nap so she could crack that bottle of wine and wash her day away. Right now, from my house in New Jersey to this auditorium and every hospital in between, there's a baby being born destined for alcoholism. And I started to understand that I have more than a responsibility of just not drinking and going to a meeting and being a big shot, that I had to start giving back in this thing. So I started to make myself available. How do we carry the message? We carry the message in a lot of different ways. We go to treatment centers, we go to detoxes, we bring meetings behind the walls, we do all that stuff. Our literature, this is how we carry the message. I started to see this, and I started to get involved, and I started to work down that inverted triangle. I became a DCM, I became the area chair, I became the alternate delegate, and last December, I rotated out. I was the area delegate for New Jersey. What an experience to do that. And I just want to tell you this story. So I was the closest delegate to Brooklyn. Brooklyn is where they held the General Service Conference. And this time last year in April, I'm driving to Brooklyn. Everyone else flew in, I'm driving up. And I decided to stop through the town that I grew up in. I'm in my truck and I'm driving in there. I'm thinking I'm just going to go through the old neighborhood. I couldn't believe how small the old neighborhood looked. I drove past that house that I grew up in. I stopped in front of that house and I thought about all the things I went through as a young child. About the fear, the insecurity, the terror I lived by. I drove the streets that I walked around aimlessly at night for 2 years. The alleyways that I would sleep in, the abandoned cars that I would fit in, wherever I could put my head down. I drove past the first bar I ever drank in. Looked the same. Nothing changed. Nothing changed. I was so grateful for that experience. I had pulled over. I was so overwhelmed with Alcoholics Anonymous and the gratitude, and I was on my way to Brooklyn to carry the voice of my area. And whether you agree with or disagree, whatever we decide is not the point. The point is, God put me in this position. And I was so grateful. And it reminded me of what you old-timers used to say. You give those stupid promises, but those promises come true. You would say things like this: if you come all the way in and sit all the way down, isolation and loneliness would leave you, and you'll have some lifelong friends and relationships. And as I look at that banner behind me, what does it say? A wealth of friends. I have a wealth of friends in Oregon because of this weekend. I have a wealth of friends around the United States and Canada because of Alcoholics Anonymous. And in New Jersey, we celebrate with 90-day pinnings and yearly pinnings. That's how we do it. We don't do chips. And see, a 90-day pin is a triangle, a gold triangle. And on that gold triangle it has a dot, and it has a G on top, and it has an AA on the bottom. And at 90 days of sobriety, you had to get dressed, because I'm that kind of guy that I listen to what the old timers say. Show respect for the thing that saved your life. Put on a jacket and tie and come to the podium and celebrate. And show that newcomer, Justin, show that newcomer that you can stay sober, because if I could do it, we could do it, you can do it. That's simple. Hey, don't get me started on chanting. If I ever chanted anything in front of my sponsor, he would kill me. Let me tell you that. What's the point? I'll tell you what the point is. You know, that's just a little an old opinion. That's all. I stood at a podium just like this. Felt like I was standing in that house when I got 12-step in front of that house. My knees were knocking. My parents were in the front row. Couldn't see them because the smoke was from their knees to the ceiling, but I knew what their knees looked like, so I knew they were there. And Richie S. would hold that pin, and he would point to that dot. He'd say, "Jim, see that little insignificant dot? That's you. But I want to make you a promise, and I want to make this promise, and I know we don't make promises in Alcoholics Anonymous, but I'm going to go out on the ledge right now. If you put one hand in God, you put one hand in Alcoholics Anonymous, and you get involved with our 3 legacies of unity, join a group, get involved in a group, get to know people in your group, and recovery, work the 12 steps, eventually take someone else through the 12 steps, and then service, to give this away in abundance. Because they said one thing to me I'll never forget. It's a consideration that I'll walk away with right now. Jimmy, do you look at people, situations, and circumstances in your life through the lens of a character defect or through the eyes of God? And because of you, I don't look at things and people and stuff like that with anger and rage and fear and all that jealousy, all that crap. I try to look at everyone with compassion and love and forgiveness. That's been the spiritual experience for me. So put one hand in God, put one hand in AA, and you'll never have a hand to pick up a drink. That's all I have. Thank you.